see over there. I only see you when you're walking to somewhere. You're so restless. It must be special there. And the next night I see you sitting over there with girl number 150. Your fashion quarter eye, another conquest of your personality. I tried to indicate that she could be the one for me, but every weekend I see you walking with a quarter to three.
What is genetic modified foods? Genetic modified foods, short for GMO, is when scientists take genes from one species, force it into the DNA of the other species. They can also control the size, taste, color, resistant to certain pests, diseases, and make crops withstand different climates. Why not harvest food without changing the DNA structure? What were humans trying to solve? Humans started to change the genetic structure of foods because they wanted to solve the issue of crops being damaged while being exported. And they also wanted the crops not to be damaged by pests. They mainly did this so that the crops could be sold at a low price. The World Health Organization states that one of the objectives for developing plants based on the GM organisms is to improve crop protection. The GM crops currently on the market are mainly aimed at an increased level of crop protection through the introduction of resistance against plant diseases caused by insects or viruses, or through increased tolerance towards herbicides. Throughout the years, did genetically modified foods have an impact on plants' evolutions of other species? Genetically modified foods were basically used so that crops could last longer in harsh conditions, and they also have a better resistance to insects so the insects don't damage the crops. The genetically modified food did actually have an impact on other plant evolutions and also other species surrounding it. The reason why GM plants have an impact on the evolution of other plants is because when the pollen of the GM plants got blown on the non-GM plants, the genes of those plants were changed for the next generation. For example, when there is a cross pollination between GM plants and non-GM plants, it causes superweeds, which is most resistant to normal insecticides. So now farmers will use stronger insecticides to kill these weeds, causing soil pollution. And these strong insecticides will find its way to a water source, eventually affecting humans. The other reason why GM plants have an effect on other species is because when those plants are modified, they are changed so that they have a higher resistance against pests. According to Jennifer Ackerman, a scientist, the pests that surround these GM plants evolved to pests that are resistant to Bt. Bt is a bacterium that produces crystal protein which is toxic to many pests. So these pests in the next generation become resistant to this. So, you might be asking yourself, what does this have to do with science? Well, now I'm going to explain how science is involved in the process of genetically modifying plants. What GM basically is a change in the genes or genesis, which includes mutation, chromosome doubling, selection, or also hybridization. What scientists do is insert a foreign gene in the plant's own gene. This can be a bacterium resistant to pesticides. That was just the basics of GMO. But now I'm going to go a little more in depth at what scientists really do. The first step. The scientist finds a gene with the wanted genetic characteristics and isolates it. The second step. The scientist makes a copy of the gene. This process is called PCR. The third step. The scientist transferred the desired gene in the original plant's gene by using a piece of plant tissue. There are three options which a scientist can insert the wanted gene in the original gene. The first way is by using a gene canon. The second way is a soil bacteria. And the third way is a material called protoplast. The fourth step. The scientist creates a new plant from the modified gene. The fifth step. Finally, the scientist checks if the inserted gene appears in the plant's progeny, which is inside the seed. So, you might be thinking now, well, is this good or bad? Now I'm going to explain what the pros and cons that the GM foods share. The pros. The genetically modified fruits is sold at a low price. The use of less pesticides and herbicides. Has more drought resistance. And has a higher tolerance to diseases. The cons. Resistant to weeds. The seeds can affect the weeds that grow in the same area. This can cause the weeds to have a higher resistance, which also leads to humans using more chemicals. These strong chemicals can affect the safety of the crops. Unknown toxins. Genetically modified seeds and foods can pose unknown risks of toxins. Insect resistance. The GM crops are genetically modified to reduce the use of pesticides, but throughout the years, the insects start to become resistant to this chemical that are used to kill them. And this can cause an increase of chemical use over time. This can cause pest problems, which can threaten the food supply. Non-reusable seeds. When genetically modified plants give off fruits, the seeds inside those fruits are not able to be planted again. This is a big problem for farmers because when they buy seeds, they can only grow the crop once, and after they have to buy new seeds. The farmers are not profiting from GM seeds because they are losing money.